I feel very happy to be here. I feel very honored to be here. I started to play harpsichord in 2015, so I'm very new. I have experience playing piano since I was 3, but I never expected I would be able to play harpsichord someday. It's very amazing thing that I have my harpsichord here now and studying old music, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So I'm writing about what is sometimes called a type 2 sonata or a binary variant sonata that was very common in the Galant, especially in keyboard sonatas and symphonies. So I'm kind of situating that within Galant style and breaking it away from the what I sort of jokingly call the tyranny of Mozart and Haydn and Beethoven in their sonata forms. So.
Yeah.
Let me just reflect a little bit where I come from, actually. As said, I'm really heavy into the organ world and retired now from teaching at age 75, no less. I don't feel it, I don't look it. But and I still like to conduct some master classes here and there and share my experience with the vast amount of keyboard music I have studied. Especially Johann Sebastian Bach, where I think I have covered probably over 90% of whatever he wrote for keyboard. And so it's strictly the experience with the music that is so vast, and to suddenly discover or even discover day by day, and you do change things if you are an artist with creative mind behind you. So I really don't play every day the same way or the next week. So what I'm saying today, basically what you hear in terms of demonstrations, is just a moment in time, and it's not the ultimate kind of solution ever. There's always more to be discovered. So this is what I like to have as a basis for understanding here in our class. And when we take the French suites, then it's really not a master class particularly about the French suites. It's really how to play in a cantabile style that Bach was really interested in. And he did have 2 instruments that were called Lautenwerk, and it was spelled with a CK at the end, Lautenwerk. And supposedly what we hear from some statements is that he preferred that particular instrument as his favorite keyboard instrument. I'm not sure who said that, but there is documentation about such a statement, and perhaps now is a good time to let that video run. This beautiful lute harpsichord was built in 2014, and I visited Keith Hurl's shop at some point, and he said, just take it home. It's not quite finished. I need to do the decoration, but I can't do it. I need to go home to Nashville, and then after the winter I go back and do all the decoration work. Meanwhile, just take it home and record the complete well-tempered clavier. And I thought that was pretty crazy, but I sure did. Take it home. It was white paint and not ready to be shown yet, technically, but it was playing beautifully. Here you see the instrument in our music room here in the Twin Cities. And here you see the decoration that was added later. About a year later, I brought it back to his shop, and he did this sort of 3-dimensional type of elaborate decoration because he loved what I was doing and excited about recording on it. Here you see it has 2 jacks that create different sounds at different plucking points. beautiful keyboards here with all kinds of beautiful carving, and I think it is a relative that helps him do this particular keyboard work. But you see, it has two sets of jacks, but it's jacking on the same string, and it's not a metal string. It's a gut string. However, he uses a substitute. It's called Nile gut, and it sounds just like a gut string, but it doesn't get out of tune easily, and it also doesn't break at all. The tuning stability is unbelievable. But you see, there is a second set of strings which he added, just kind of as a artist kind of idea, as an instrument builder, which is a 4-foot string, but it does not sound. It's just sympathetic, and has to be tuned with a toothpick because there is no plug. And here's the complete instrument looking at us. Just a wonderful inspiration all the time. I've made many recordings on it, and the French suites were just released last year, and now the toccatas are coming out, I think, before Christmas. Different sounds. On the same string. And the amazing thing, you can have a third sound that combines both. Especially ideal for more aggressive, let's say French overture style material, then the sound is fantastic. So you have really 3 levels of sound on one set of strings, which is wonderful on just a one manual instrument. So we can really play a ton of literature with a lot of satisfaction. Now he's concentrating actually on violin making. And he has made many violins, and he has a friend that tests these violins from time to time and gives him insight what's good and what's bad, and he makes changes. So he's really researched the art of Italian violin making now, and really has discovered some secrets, as I understand. But not only does he do beautiful instrument work, but he also can paint beautifully. I mean, the decoration work and all the CD covers that are coming out on my recordings, these are all painted. He's drawn himself and photographed himself. Now we're using those. But he's also an incredible music kind of genius. He actually did study harpsichord in the Netherlands and changed into harpsichord making. But Keith has also an incredible mind about music in general, and he has some really very straightforward, almost scary type statements, and you can read them on my website under different types of music. And I'm going to just take a portion here of his writing. Regular meter in music puts the brain to sleep. That's a good statement, isn't it? This means that it is only intended to be heard for the purpose of marching, dancing, beating time to, or whatever. Music that is intended to be listened to by the cultivated and uncultivated ear requires a wholly different attitude in performance. Specifically, that the performer must do everything in his or her power to prevent the brain from being put to sleep by the repetitiousness of regular meter. That's something to digest, isn't it? Just think about, the regular meter, tick tock, metronome, metronome, metronome. Yeah, well, I'm against that metronome. If you own one, burn it, please. To accomplish this, Bach, according to Creepenkerl, in his quote from a letter he wrote and which has been published, Bach himself, his sons and Vogel played the masterpieces with such a profound declamation that they sounded like polyphonic songs sung by individual great artist singers. Thereby, all means of good singing were brought into use. No chacara, no portamento was missing. Even breathing was in all the right places. Bach's music wants to be sung with the maximum of art. That's the direct statement. Bach himself urges players to acquire a cantabile style. And this is what it's all about today, our workshop. We're using the French suites to discover the possibilities of cantabile playing and how to arrive at that. Therefore, every voice must express the musical thought appropriate to the notes provided for it to sing. If this means that every voice is singing a different effect to properly express the notes provided by the composer, then that is how the music should be performed. From a brain point of view, only what is immediately interesting, let me just turn that page, sorry, interesting is capable of keeping it awake. And more importantly, from a brain point of view, the normal human brain can and loves to follow the music of 6 completely independently expressive voices or events happening simultaneously. That is a challenge, of course, to make that happen. And that's why he said, take that Lautenwerk home and record the well-tempered clavier, because it has never done before, and it should be done in a cantabile style. So if you want to submerge your ear in that water of independent cantabile playing, listen to some of my recordings of the well-tempered clavier, which you can find on Spotify all over the place. And so it's complete there, so you can pick whatever prelude and fugue, and you'll see what I mean. You can actually follow each voice while you're listening, also partly because it's recorded in wide stereo, and you can hear the bass line, tenor line going over the whole spectrum of your stereo. So that helps also to achieve that clarity, but it is really the independent playing. So that's about all for my introduction and general hints of what we're up to here today. And I would like to start and have someone play one of the movements. Maybe we should start, I would like it, the Allemande of suite number 4 would be wonderful to start with. Thank you very much, Chelsea. Thank you very much. As you probably noticed when you follow the scores that we circulated electronically, it's a PDF score. If you're looking at that, we saw some different notes that were played. So obviously there are different copies from students of Bach, and there are different ornamentation suggestions that I read about, and there will be note differences. I don't think we need to concentrate on those and figure those out where they are. It doesn't change the music that much. More important is that we look at some of the interesting progressions and interesting certain key notes in the texture. First of all, the Allemande used to be a processional dance that I read about, but the way Bach uses it is a more a singing style, a slower version of an expressive movement. So it doesn't mean that you have to be able to walk through that like in a procession. So you can be quite free about it. Now, the audio that I received from the playing was not very good. It kind of dropped out. Was that the case everywhere else too? Because yeah, well, but anyway, I'm not sure if my audio is perfect. I did everything possible technically. What I like to point out is so these certain key points in the figuration would be nice to think ahead of those and play them independently against the bass. See in the second line? That's basically a disguised second part a texture, which you can hold down the notes and make it sort of a two-part situation. If you look in measure 6, there are certainly momentarily 4 voices rather than just 3 voices. So he's not always consistent, and I know why he wrote 4 voices in measure number 6, because he didn't want that alto response to the soprano be that low in the tenor voice, because it sounds kind of ugly and there's too much space between soprano and tenor. So that's why he suddenly just added a momentary extra alto note or extra tenor note. So development of that phrase. So Chelsea, can you play it one more time? Okay, now in measure 6, suddenly your sequence comes to an end. The whole development of your notes that you pointed out to us that are important was really nice, even though the audio was fragile, but I could see that you picked up on the idea. But in measure 6 is typically sort of an ending of a phrase, and it's very French for him to do that, because if you look at the de Grigny organ works, they sound horrible if you play through the cadences straight through and don't rest for a moment and start fresh. And this is the idea of French style, that when you come to a cadence, allow more time and start fresh with a nice deep breath and diaphragm support and start singing again. So so when you arrive at number 6, starts a new phrase. So when you, and that's a general rule, it's not just for these French suites. When you have a phrase in Baroque music come to a cadence, don't just go through the station like a fast train. Just give it a little time and thought and sensitivity, basically. So that would be great to do. And then the subject of ornamentation, you tried some, you added some mordants that I heard. And I think on occasion you tried a little run also that I noticed. Those are possible. Let me try that again. Some of it was successful, some other things were not so great. The problem with ornamentation is ideally it should come on the spot. It shouldn't really be figured out exactly. But that takes a lot of experience, and even myself right now wasn't too happy about doing it. Some runs work well. When you have a sequence, which I did by mistake, I added the same run twice in a row. That is not a good idea. So you should always not do the expected, don't do the unexpected. So I was not happy with that, but that's a learning point for you to just see that even I can make some mistakes like that. So it takes time to develop a good sense of ornamentation, not just because ideas of notes seem to be wonderful, but more importantly so is the notes that you have in your mind and you're happy about. They need to be executed in a certain really beautiful, elegant way, just like ice skating. You know, it's not just a little turn, it's how that turn develops. And then it's beautiful. It's just exactly what you want to see and what you want to hear. So the execution of any kind of trill and any kind of extra ornamentation is almost more important than the notes itself. So keep that in mind. So I think we can move on. Generally, the Allemande, of course, you will play it every day a little bit differently. And thank you for your interest in that movement. Which movement should we touch on next?
I have also the Gavotte and the Menuet.
Okay, great. overall, it flows beautifully. You know exactly the notes. A couple note differences in my score here again, but it doesn't matter. They don't change the whole piece. Your articulation is, of course, very acceptable. On the other hand, I want to talk about articulation in general. I think it's completely overstated in the harpsichord world. The harpsichord by nature is already so full of articulation because of the plugging of that string in the same manner, no matter how you exactly hit the key, although there might be slight differences, but overall it's as unmusical as the organ is. The organ is also, in my opinion, by nature an unmusical instrument because even a violin, one sound on a violin is more musical than holding any of the notes or plucking any of the strings of the harpsichord. So that's why we as performer need to really concentrate on the timing of each figuration and how to interplay a certain voice with another voice, make it interesting, creating a feeling of expression without the instrument doing anything by itself. It's all up to us how we handle that. It's a real big challenge. And so technically everything has to be sounding, has to go very easily before you can deal with the articulation idea. I think it's overstated. Even in this movement, you can just concentrate on the slurs that are indicated, supposedly by Bach, I guess. But other than that, I would not really concentrate much on articulation. Can you play it just a little slower? For the pulse is a little bit aggressive too, for me, just a little more gentle in tempo, and just do the two slurs, and the rest don't worry about it. Can't read. These glasses are difficult for me to handle. So at any rate, you see the pulse is slower. I would like for you to experiment with that idea and see where you arrive, and don't over articulate the movement too much. So we can go to the next movement, which is
the minuet. Sorry, I tried something that didn't work.
Yeah, well, audio is really marginal. It's dropping out here. Yeah, but anyway, that's very interesting because I don't know which edition I used for the recording. It may have been actually this one, but I've never heard this Menuet, I have to admit to you. That's surprising. And it tells you that Bach, there must be different copies. There is no manuscript of Bach. There are all copies of students, and they included certain things. And the French manner is really not to include a minuet and an aria. That's not part of a normal French suite. And the designation of that term French suite did not come from Bach himself. That was added later by some other people. And I don't need to go into detail about that, but basically we're looking at suites that have French character. They sound like French suites, but many really use the Italian manner, like for instance in the Courante, so the style of the composition changes, and so I think it's often more, the suites are often more Italian than it actually is French. So yeah, sorry that I can't comment more on that Menuet. The only thing is, when I play a Menuet, I'm really thinking of somebody dancing it right in front of my eyes with this gentle, bowing at the end and just going into the next phrase. So maybe you want to keep that just visually in your mind. Just dream up some nice dance and play for it. It might help you to shape things automatically beautifully. Okay, what could be next?
That's all from me.
Okay, thank you so much, Chelsea, and best of luck for your future
Thank you.
profession and for your dissertation, etc.
Thank you so much.
Now we have two, right? Yeah, this would remind me a little bit of the playing that we all were taught when we were growing up as young students. Like in my case in Frankfurt, I had some harpsichord instruction there. Actually, it was part of the church music program. You had to take it, and there was Frau Jäger-Jung was her name, and she was playing quite well, and at that time it was completely the style that one plays everything perfectly together. So we have changed now, and when you think of the English word harpsichords, harp is rolling things a little bit. Harpist is an instrument. It's a player that is used to arpeggiating things, and I think we need to think of that fact perhaps on the side, at least, that harpsichord playing is not like piano playing where you were taught to play exactly left hand and right hand exactly together, and if you didn't do that you were punished with a few bad words by the teacher. But this has really changed right now. I think we're in a situation where harpsichord playing is especially elegant when things are not played together. And you can actually go into YouTube videos and find pianists that play, the old piano rolls that you can find from the Welte recording studio in Freiburg, Germany, where certain noted composers played their works, or certain pianists played other people's works. And you can find these examples on YouTube. And they play Brahms and even Mozart. It's not played together. It's incredibly independently offset with each other, left hand and right hand. Often the left hand's playing ahead of the right hand. And it takes listening to this. Words cannot really explain, but I urge you to look for it because that's what we want to do here in that suite also. You see the freedom
Yes.
that is going on. You need to work on that. Overdo it first. Just do way too much, just to explore the waves of the ocean, and then calm it down a little bit, and shape it the way you really want it. But you won't get it immediately right. Just overdo it first, and maybe like even that. See, the patience, you need to learn how to be patient with music, to really discover the beauty behind the curtains. There are so many layers in music that we don't discover if we play too fast. So it would be good to play slow first and try to imply all of these things and be very free, open-minded. And then calm down and step back and shape it the way you really want to play it in recital. But never like the metronome, throw it away. But the problem the metronome is, even when you don't play with the metronome, subconsciously it's still ticking in your mind. Yes. That's where I have a problem. I think metronomes are only good for beginning students when they just don't understand the rhythm and just don't, kind of put the mathematics together. Then the metronome helps to be a tool. But later as a musician, it doesn't do a darn thing for you. It actually destroys the music. You don't discover the music because the metronome is still ticking in your head. Well, I guess Gould liked the metronome, certainly plays like it. And frankly, that is why many people love the recordings of Glenn Gould, because they are very, very predictable. And when people hear the next measure the way it should be in their mind, and he actually plays it that way, they're extremely happy. And that's where the problem is in the whole understanding of Bach's keyboard music. I certainly have to say Glenn Gould was a genius in his own rights, and unbelievably gifted, unbelievably talented, unbelievable memory. And I mean, you can't say anything too badly about him, except I would say the playing has nothing to do with Bach. It really has nothing to do with Bach. It's just the notes played accurately, very virtuosically, beautifully shaped. Everything works. Everything is clean and clear. But that's not enough. I think there's so much more behind the Bach notes that Glenn Gould at the time did not discover. On the other hand, times change, and interpretation awareness changes. And suddenly we are in a period of discovering performance practice ideas, and we discover those because we go to the historic instruments. We play on old violins, and we play on forte pianos, and suddenly discover, well, I really have to think my whole interpretation. I have to rethink it again. And it happens for organists when they go over to Europe and play on the historic instruments, where everything feels like you never had an organ lesson before. It suddenly is so different, and you have to adjust to that. And I think it's the same coming from the piano, the modern piano, then suddenly jumping on the harpsichord, which is really a different area of music making, even though we build harpsichords still today. But that's how it started. The clavichord, the harpsichord were kind of sisters. They are brothers and sisters at the time. Those were the practice instruments, and the modern piano came much later. So once you step into the harpsichord, you really have to try to kind of see if you can discover the way they played at that time. And I think they didn't play that fast either. Also, the aspect of improvisation is extremely important when you are a harpsichordist. The more continuo you can play, the more you will actually develop in your own solo playing, because you get some ideas from playing with other people and being allowed to do something, some kind of bridging cadence improvisation that is required in certain movements of the orchestral music or any kind of cantata work that you might be involved in. Improvisation is a key element in discovering the beauty of written music at the time, I think. Keep in mind, these people were not distracted by television and all kinds of sports activities at the time. They had time at home to practice. And they didn't just practice what was in front of their nose, printed or handwritten at that time, of course. No Xerox machine available. People copied music all the time. That took some time to copy some music. And then you go on the instrument and you finally get bored with the score and you start playing your own music, your own inner radio. And you should try it. Play your own inner radio. So that's why I never have radio on in the house. Portion of my inner radio that I just turned on. This is not a piece that I composed, I just made it up. So once you can do that, you will play all of the preludes and fugues or any kind of literature, you will play very differently because suddenly you can absorb music. And once you have absorbed the music, it feels like you composed it actually. And when you play it from memory, it feels like it's your own piece of music. And you suddenly are not afraid of doing things that most people wouldn't do because you can improvise and add some elements to the music, basically adding a completely different interpretive level to a certain score. And one can't talk about this really with words. It just needs to be experienced over time, but don't be afraid not to just go for it. Improvise a lot. Can you play? Have you improvised yourself? Have you tried things?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, people are afraid of doing this because they are ashamed of making mistakes. But you know, the good news in improvisation is you have to realize there are no mistakes. When you improvise, there is never a mistake. And if there is a mistake, you don't admit to it. You need to cover it up somehow. You need to fix it after. If something surprising happened, you can fix it later. Most of the time, with some, it takes experience, of course, but it's wrong to stop. If you stop, you will never learn it. It's like, oh no, I can't swim, and you drown. You know, you don't let this happen, do you? You don't let yourself drown. You will keep going. Yeah, just do it the same with improvisation. It's very important to just simply get over that hurdle and be brave and do it. Do we have another piece to play? Oh, we haven't had.
I have a Courante and then Sarabande ready. Would you like to hear the Sarabande?
Yeah, sure. We have time, I think. Yes. Yeah, I liked already your willingness to play quite a bit offset with the right and left hand. You already adjusted to that quite nicely. You can do more, but you will experiment with that idea, and finally you will find the beauty of doing quite a bit of that. So you're starting out quite well on that. When you play ornaments, you need to. I'm not sure in your score whether you had an appoggiatura in the first measure. Is that in your score printed, or did you add
It is,
that?
yes.
It's added there. It's there on the score.
Yes.
Ah, okay. See, what I have a problem with is I would never really play it. That is plain ugly, you know, that's a horrible harmony. I would never play it that together, if at all, maybe before the beat. See, sometimes before the beat is not necessarily wrong. We were taught when we were in school at your age level, we were taught ornaments are always on the beat. I don't believe that is true. There are ornaments that fit so much better before the beat. And I can put my finger on certain scores where it doesn't work really on the beat. It sounds horrible. So maybe that appoggiatura you may want to play before the beat. Then there was another in measure 5, at least my score. I think you played a sort of a schleifer, I call it, a slur.
Yes, I added it.
Oh, you added it, sure. But again, see, I have a problem with that harmony. It's just not pretty, is it? It's really biting and it doesn't quite fit. So play it before.
Yes.
Wow, doesn't it work? It works
Yes.
immediately beautiful. So I want your attention to when you add ornamentation that you don't come up with weird parallel sevenths and weird dissonances that really distract from the beauty of that ornamentation. So sometimes it's a matter of where you place it exactly. So we just discovered that right now. So you want to be sensitive to harmony and progressions of intervals that don't sound weird. Things like that is just really, need to just develop an ear for that. I think now you will hit the ceiling next time somebody plays like that. It just takes awareness, and you will never do it again. Okay, good. Yeah. Let me just see, we have time. You get the idea. You don't have to play the whole piece. So you can, again, allow a lot of time, be very lyrical, feel like you're a singer on stage and you look beautiful and you have this fantastic voice, and just, it's a love song. As you know, the Sarabande originally, I read recently, came actually from Mexico and Spain, as a wild dance, a real wild dance. And by the time Bach dealt with that, it became quite the opposite, namely a very lyrical love song. So it's really strange to have that misunderstanding of generations looking at that term dance idea. But it was originally quite even, I think there are statements of very erotic kind of dance too. So yeah, I mean, you have to be, there's a certain truth to it. You can tickle people's feelings with these notes. You can really get sensitive with that any kind of sarabande. And then about ornamentation, you may want to look into the partitas of Bach, the suites. Some of the ornamentation, there are actually double versions of certain movements, plain and then ornamented by Bach. Unbelievable, I mean, the sky's the limit. It's unbelievable what you see on the page, and it's beautiful. And so ornamentation is, of course, connected to improvisation again. So the more you do it, the easier it will fall into place. Do we have another movement to play?
How about doing a current?
Yeah, Courante.
Okay.
Yeah, my edition has very different notes, especially the second half of the second portion of that movement. Very different. Overall, I like your pulse. I think the tempo is quite okay. Articulation, for my taste, is overdone. In the left hand, it's not necessarily to be that pointed. I think the movement speaks by itself, just playing the notes without much. See, I didn't articulate at all in the left hand. Just let the notes flow. The harpsichord is so aggressive by nature that one doesn't have to point out that damper on the harpsichord, you know. And once you use the damper, then you're really articulating the notes, obviously. But I think the harpsichord doesn't need that. The more you can hold down and create that artificial pedal, I think is much more natural to the instrument. I think that whole articulation idea came just later because people had nothing else to say about the music. It's just kind of boring. And play just the notes and then nothing else to say. Well, you need to articulate. I think this music speaks by itself beautifully. Gentle articulation, yeah, with sensitivity, you can do that. There is a measure that's a couple of measures, number 4 and number 6, if you have my score. That's actually without the upbeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 in any kind of score. Now, well, you see the trill on the E flat. So yes. you would be inclined to usually we trill usually from the upper note. Most people would play. However, these 3-note figures with the trill in the middle, you can find all over the literature, not just Bach. You can find it in Buxtehude, you can find it in Pachelbel, you can find it everywhere, all over the literature. And when this happens, especially in fairly brisk tempo, what we do is we do not start on the upper note. The previous note is already the upper note, and we delay. See, we delay the entrance of the first note of the 3-note pattern, and it serves already as the upper note of the trill. Can you try it?
I see. I realized that.
See, yeah, it is not a. Yeah, no, the problem, yeah, I know it's difficult to understand what I'm talking about. What is necessary is that you consider the first note of the 3-note pattern to be already your upper note trill, which requires that you wait playing it before you play it. Play the group late and just fake it, basically. Don't stop, let it flow.
Oh.
Still not stopping the F, just play right through it.
Oh, I see, yes. Okay.
It's all over the literature, it's everywhere, and people labor over it because they have this repeated upper note to play and can never manage. And even Martin Haselberg, when I recorded him for Naxos Records, there was Muffat toccatas, same thing, full of stuff like that. He couldn't play it, and I said, well, why don't you just play it like this? Oh, show me that again, what did you just do? And yeah. So it's really see the group as one item and start it late. Start it late, and you're done. There you go. Isn't that easy?
Yes, actually.
It's a very easy and it sounds extremely good. Very virtuosic. It's totally easy to do, and so you find it all over the place. You'll run into it all the time, and it's no problem anymore. No 2 repeated notes. No 2 E flats. No 2 Ds. It's too hard. It's too hard in tempo. In any kind of short. Well, Johann Gottfried Walter also is full of it. Absolutely full of it. Just hundreds of the same kind of problems in concerto movements, and you can't play it. with 2 repeated notes. It's just too hard.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no source that tells you that. It's simply, I don't think any organ teacher will tell you about it. It's my discovery, basically. Has served me very well throughout the literature. It's so easy to play and so convincing. And yeah, it just puts everything into its own seat. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the emphasis on the non-metronomic and vocal cantabile approach. I've really thought a lot about what Bach meant. What did he mean by cantabile? And yeah, you bring up the non-metric aspects, which I think are definitely. What do you think also about possibly it being dynamic nuance and legato?
Dynamic nuance on the harpsichord I find very difficult to achieve unless you play certain chords and play less voices or more voices, or arpeggiate them, or attack it aggressively. That's where the dynamics are. I don't think you can really, I mean, the pianistic idea, the expressiveness on the piano is certainly easier to achieve than on the harpsichord. When you come from the piano, and try to play the harpsichord, it's a different world. It's completely different. We have to discover other ways of shaping the music, making it interesting, namely substituting other ideas for the dynamics that you don't have.
Yeah. Well, Bach did have access and did play the clavichord, which of course does have the dynamic nuance. So my question was whether the dynamic nuance which he discovered through the clavichord, if you try to emulate as much as you can on the harpsichord, or is that something you just toss aside?
Well, it's not easily transferable. I think first of all, the clavichord is on a much softer scale of sound. It is a really tiny sound. It doesn't carry that much through a building. So it's really a practice instrument more than anything else. It's meant to, I think, primarily to practice on at home and not disturb anybody. And of course, with even the ability of playing a vibrato on any key is unlike what you can do at the harpsichord or the piano. So it has special effects there, but it also has certain limitations too, and that's why sometimes the clavichord touch needs to be more articulated. Otherwise, you jam notes, because there is the so-called gebundenes clavichord and ungebundenes clavichord, which means keys share a string with each other. And that's dangerous stuff, because you can smear notes and not make it clear. So it takes very sensitive playing. And I think that's great, because if you can play sensitive on the clavichord, transfer that on the harpsichord, it certainly will benefit. I think it will not hurt. So that's about all I can say to your question.
And could you address the legato idea? When you think about singers, you know, it's singers don't detach notes inherently. They tend to connect within phrases or bits, motives.
Not only do singers do what you just said, but they also don't sing on the beat. There's actually a Baroque Italian voice method that says, supposedly I heard that from Keith Hill, it says the artist singer is supposed to sing either before the beat or after the beat, hardly ever on the beat. So if you think that little further, Frank Sinatra did exactly that. He never is on the beat, never. Yeah, and and there's some beauty about it. That's why singing is so admirable, and people don't know why, but it's so beautiful, and it's an art, and it's basically, that's the secret behind the whole. Well, some of the secret, at least, and Yeah, legato playing on the harpsichord, yes, yes. I think we should play a lot of legato. I mean, all of the harmonic good notes that you can hold down in the left hand, hold them down, don't lift them. Let's see if there's a here. See, that whole chord is not. It's hold it all down. Hold it all down. As long as it doesn't sound ugly in terms of dissonances biting each other next door. Usually scale-wise motion, I like that. Couple, you need to give up. You need to be sensitive for anything that just isn't beautiful and bites each other. So scale-wise motion on the harpsichord is dangerous, but anything that's chordal, you should always hold it down. And that's even more than legato playing. It's really almost an over legato.
Yeah.
It helps the harpsichord to sing better, because otherwise it's just a lot of what we used to call sewing machine style. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the harpsichord has had some bad comments. But if it's played more elegantly, you wouldn't think of a sewing machine. It's very musical. It can be extremely musical, but it takes planning with your inner ear. It's really not the fingers. It's your inner ear that is the radio station, and these are the speakers, the fingers. But it's really the mind that has to hear the music and hear the fingers make it known to the rest of the world what you're thinking. So I think that's the main comment I can say to legato. Legato on the organ is dangerous because acoustics are against you, and other matters. It's too complex. I can't really put it well into words. One can explain it on the organ very fast once you compare the effects of playing a certain way against another way. So on the organ, I think it's very, very good to be very detailed. I don't call it articulation on the organ. I call it touch. It's a culture of touch, because it's not a matter of just staccato or non-legato. It's all kinds of variations in between. So the culture of touch also depends on the sounds you're playing on, whether you're playing on full organ or just a little flute. So the whole touch should always match the sound resources. And I'm sure we could even say that to the harpsichord as well, that depending on the texture of the music, you adjust your touch. For instance, a cheek, I can see, be kind of articulated and jumpy, get that aggressiveness out of the instrument more than just playing legato all the time. So it depends on the piece. Does that answer maybe your question?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else with a question? Well, if you practice, especially with students, if you practice new music, I think it's very important that you are sensitive about your fingerings that you're using. And if a certain measure is very difficult, make sure you nail down that fingering and use your pencil and put it in there, because it will become so much easier the second time, third time, fourth time around. And if needed, change it. If you think it's too complicated, something better comes to mind, change it. Then play it like this, because your motor memory will develop better than just kind of looking for and trying to figure out how the fingers should play a certain passage. Yeah, nail it down with good fingerings, which is a good trick to make things easier. I still have to do it with a new scores that I play. I have to put some fingerings in there. And I'm also known as a bad sight reader. I don't see, I've never learned. I had to accompany choirs that much and being thrown into the swimming pool, swim through that score, so to speak. That's how you learn it, in front of a choir, being forced to play and kind of cheat on the score if you can't quite read it all. But cheating sometimes then develops into a real super skill after time. I've known some colleagues that can read unbelievable scores, but they had that experience too, and learned it through their dad playing for the choirs that he conducted, and threw the scores right at the sun at the last minute, and here you go, play. That's how you learn it. And I think it's the same with a lot of the literature. The more Baroque music you play, the more experience you develop. And like this trill trick that I just shared with you, these are things that and there are many other such examples that one could come up with and mention, but it's just the experience. The more practice, the more experience, the more insight, etc. And it changes every day. That's the beauty of our art.